Hey everyone, this is Ben with cholinergicurticaria.net, and in this video I'm going to talk a little bit about my diet background. And in the future videos I'm going to talk about my specific diet that I eat now, and I'll also I may show you some pictures or some video footage of just the way I prepare my foods and eat them. It's nothing interesting at all really, it's really bland, plain foods. But before I get into that, I just kind of wanted to give you a background. How I came to stumble upon the whole diet thing was, when I was in my late teens, I began to have a lot of stomach issues. I would have really bad stomach cramps, and when I'd have to use the bathroom, you know, I would get really just sharp, sort of stabbing pains in my stomach. And, excuse me, it was just a horrible feeling. I didn't know what was wrong with me. And at the time, I didn't really associate it with any certain food. I just always kind of assumed that when this episode would happen, it wouldn't happen every day, but whenever I would get these bad stomach pains, I always assumed that, you know, the food wasn't properly cooked, or maybe it was contaminated with some bacteria or something like that. So I never really knew what was going on. And, you know, I got cholinergic urticaria when I was 18 years old, and that was certainly around the time, maybe a year or two before I got it, my stomach issues started to present themselves. And after my hives went into remission, it seems like my stomach issues also kind of went into remission, or at least weren't a major issue for me, because I could eat pizza and I could eat those sort of things without any, you know, major stomach issues. Now, whenever my hives came back when I was about 22 or 23 years old, and I was in college and I was also working part-time, what happened was the hives came back. I got really bad rashes on my skin, and I kind of began to think, okay, is there maybe some connection with food? And I also had the severe stomach cramps that came back, and I'm talking about it would just be really bad, and I would sometimes get diarrhea and so forth. So what I did was I began to kind of think, well, maybe, you know, I'm allergic to milk, or maybe just milk tears me up. And I would eat a lot of pizza or milk, and I would notice my stomach would get in really bad shape, my hives would intensify and so forth. So I began to make the connection, and I kind of said, okay, I'm going to cut out some of these foods. And I would cut out milk, and that was by far the hardest thing, because everything has milk in it that tastes good. You know, ice cream, most cookies, you know, milk. I used to love to drink milk. So I cut out that, and everything improved, and the eczema rashes on my skin kind of went away. And by the way, I'll just give you a kind of a brief list of what I now know are symptoms of food allergy or food intolerance. And if you have any of these symptoms, you might want to stop and think if maybe you have it. First of all, I would get canker sores sometimes on my lip, like on the inside of my lip right there. I would get kind of a canker sore, which is kind of looks like a little ulcer. I would get those on my lips, or every once in a while on my gums, and they would hurt really badly. It would take about a week or two for those to usually go away, but I would seem like I would get one every month or every other month or so, and that is actually a symptom of a food allergy or food intolerance issue. I don't get them hardly at all ever now. I would get headaches. Sometimes, like, you eat a certain food, it just makes you feel really groggy or have like a headache. You know, I buy a lot of bananas now because that's one of the foods I eat. And every time I buy them, I always buy like, you know, 3 or 4 big bunches, and I have them in the bags. And the cashier at the store is always like, wow, you eat a lot of bananas. I always tell them, yeah, I have a pet monkey at home. But I'm joking with them. They know I'm joking. But one of the cashiers commented one time that she can't eat bananas, and she said that she used to get these horrible migraine headaches whenever she would eat bananas. And I think that's interesting, because I think a lot of headaches are associated with food allergies or food intolerance, sometimes even migraines. I can eat bananas just fine, so that's good news for me. Another symptom, if you have possible food allergies, if you have a lot of bloating in your stomach, like if you eat a certain food and it really bloats you up, you probably have an intolerance or an allergy to that food. And, you know, you can be intolerant or allergic to just about anything: milk, wheat, dairy, preservatives that they put in foods, coloring, natural flavors. A lot of people, I think, assume that if you have an organic, you know, if you go on organic food or whatever, that it's going to cure you. Well, you know, I've grown stuff in my own garden. It doesn't get much organic than that. And I can still, you know, corn, for example, irritates my stomach a little bit. And I grow corn, organic seeds planted in my own garden. I put no fertilizer or anything on it. It still causes me symptoms. So any kind of bloating, gas, if you get diarrhea after eating a certain food, or diarrhea quite often throughout the week, or constipation, any of those two extremes where your digestive system just isn't quite right, that's a pretty good sign that you may have a food allergy or food intolerance. if you get any kind of eczema or rashes or kind of little itchy bumps that'll pop up on your hands. I get itchy bumps on my hands sometimes that were just really weird looking. I have some pictures on my website. And anything like that, that can be a sign of food allergy. Of course, hives, any kind of hives, not just cholinergic urticaria. And a stuffy nose or a runny nose, if you find yourself that you just really can't breathe that well, or your sense of smell is kind of dulled, then that could be a sign of food allergy. But anyway, back to the topic. So I began to cut out these foods, and when I did, I noticed that my hives would get a little better and the rashes cleared up, but they still wouldn't go away. And over the few years, I would kind of go on certain diets, try this and try that. Nothing really quite worked. And when I got really serious about my diet was when, you know, my hives were as severe as they'd ever been, and I finally just said, you know what, I really need to research diets in depth, because I know that they cleared up the rashes. I know that my hives will get better or worse depending on what I eat. So maybe if I just completely went on an allergy elimination thing, I could at least cross that off my list of a potential factor in my own hives. So that's what I did. And what I did was I researched a bunch of allergy elimination diets online, I didn't follow any one diet. I just kind of looked at the pattern. Most of them said, for example, when you're cutting out sugars, to cut out processed sugar, and one of the sugars that it would allow you to have is maple syrup because it's more natural. So I went with like natural maple syrup, the real stuff, not the fake stuff you buy. And I looked at turkey. Turkey and chicken were some of the least allergic type of meats, so I stuck with turkey. White rice is one of the most, least allergic foods out there, so I went with some white rice. I also just tried to cut out as many vegetables as possible, and I kept doing this, and I finally put together what my current diet is now, which I'll talk about in another video and show you what it looks like. But that's kind of how I stumbled upon it. And before I get into my diet in the next video, I just kind of wanted to also share a few other things with you. I'm not sure what it is about the diet, because I tried certain diets. I tried something called a salicylate intolerance, or yeah, I think that's how you pronounce that. And that's just a naturally occurring chemical in food, and they'll put it as a preservative sometimes in like dried fruits and things like that. So I went through and I tried to eliminate that. I went on a low histamine diet. Now the food that I eat now is very low in histamine. Some of the things like the broccoli is very high in histamine, and I do eat broccoli, but all the other foods are fairly low in histamine. But I tried a low histamine diet and even ate foods like, I want to say it was cashews or something like that are supposed to be relatively low in histamine, and they would still just upset my stomach or do something to me. So I eventually figured out that, a low histamine diet's really not the key. I went gluten-free, and I certainly don't eat wheat today, and what I eat is essentially gluten-free, but gluten-free alone didn't do it. Certain gluten-free foods can make me just as sick as a gluten-filled food. So I ate a yeast-free diet, reading all this candida nonsense on the internet. I cut out as much carbs and sugar and all that, and I tried that for a while. That didn't do it for me. I went on a low sodium diet where I just tried to reduce my salt intake. I did a low sugar diet where I just tried to cut out sugar as much as possible. And, those are just some of the different diets that I would try. And even within those certain diets, I would cut certain foods out, try certain foods. Went back and forth, nothing really worked. And what really worked was when I finally decided to just put together my own diet by looking at all these food allergy issues that people have. And I've read stories where there's some children that have such severe food allergies, they only eat like 5 foods or 3 foods. And that's what really made me decide that, I really need to examine my diet, cut out as many foods as possible just so I can know for sure. And that's what started on my journey with diet. And I went on this diet. It took me about 3 to 5 weeks before I began to notice that my symptoms were going away. It does take time. And I think the reason it takes time is because when you're eating something that you're allergic to or that your body is intolerant to, it just takes that long for your body to get rid of all the inflammation and all the buildup of whatever chemical or enzymes or whatever that my body wasn't properly breaking down. And so my current diet, I'll just go ahead and tell it to you now. but I want to have a whole video for this because I get a lot of questions about it. So I'm going to show in another video, show the foods I eat and talk more about it. But I eat white rice, and what I do to flavor that is pour maple syrup on there. The real stuff, not the fake stuff. It's kind of expensive, but it tastes actually pretty good. It sounds gross, like you think of white rice with maple syrup on it, but it actually tastes really good. I eat sweet potatoes. I eat broccoli florets. I eat turkey, which is usually just a turkey breast. I don't like the full turkeys that much because they get kind of greasy tasting, but the breast, I just throw it in a crock pot with water. It tastes delicious. I eat bananas, usually the Chiquita brand. I eat strawberries, blueberries, and I drink water. That is my main staple diet that I eat. Now, aside from that, I will sometimes cheat on my diet, but there's very few foods that I'll cheat with because most of them will cause symptoms pretty quickly. And so I pretty much just stay on this diet if I want to stay hives free. When I go off of this diet, my hives can come back. It's usually not severe. You know, I ate some junk food and my hives got a little prickly once and I cut it out and they just went away again. It always takes, like if I eat it, it takes about a week or two for it to go out. But when I first started, it took about 3 to 5 weeks. That's how long it took to notice the results. So that's kind of my current diet. That's how I stumbled onto it. Again, the biggest thing is it's really hard. You'll have, whenever I went on it, the hardest thing by far, two things. The first thing was the cravings, because what I've noticed is another symptom of a food allergy is when you cut a food out, if you have an intense craving for that food, it's probably doing something to your body that's not good. And so when I cut out like milk, I would crave ice cream, crave milk, crave cheese. When I cut out wheat, I would crave that. Just everything I would cut out, I would crave it. Once I actually get on this diet, I don't crave stuff as much, which is interesting. But if I'll go back and eat, say I have a cheat meal or something and eat some potato chips or something, I'll actually crave those really intensely. Whereas when I don't eat them, I don't really have that many cravings. Second thing that makes this diet really hard is that our culture is so just diet oriented. Everybody wants to go out to eat, go out to eat. Well, how do you go out to eat when you eat what I eat? And it's frustrating because, you know, at church or your family wants to go out to eat, have get-togethers, and you don't want to be this weird guy that's like, oh no, I'm not going to eat anything. But at the same time, if I eat this stuff, then it's going to cause, you know, horrible stomach cramps, or my hives are going to come back, or all of the above. And so that is the hardest thing with the diet, is just staying on it. It takes a lot of discipline, but what really has made me want to stay on it is just the results. Just that I can actually live. I don't have stomach pain and cramps. I don't have rashes on my body. I don't have hives that I break into every time I do anything physical. So that really has made me stay on the diet. And if you try the diet, always talk to a doctor first to make sure it's going to be safe for you. I don't know that it'll be safe really long term. I've been on about, I guess, 3 years now or so. And just very little cheat meals here and there, but I pretty much stay on the diet consistently. And I also take a multivitamin, and I do some other things, which I'll talk about in another video. But the diet, the key to it is really whenever you feel that you're hungry or you're craving something, just go eat. Just go, you know, if I'm craving a pizza or something, I'll just go eat some turkey and rice and vegetables. That'll actually fill me up and it takes the craving away. So that's just a little bit about my diet, and I'll talk to you more about it like I've said a million times. And thank you so much for watching, and have a great day.